Hello and welcome to Too Long Didn't Read, the only weekly show with expert views on the latest housing market news, the best social media content, and a joke-telling potato. Now here's your hosts, Randy Shiozaki and Scott Brickson.
Hello, agentpreneurs, and welcome back to TLDR. I'm Randy Shiozaki.
And I'm Scott Brickson.
And we're here to cover a bunch of the great stories from this past week. These stories are pulled straight from our notables in our daily email. So if you're not checking those out, you should be doing that. Today, we're covering three really hot topics. Topic number one is the Wall Street Journal and Realtor.com have partnered up to pick the hottest emerging markets. Scott is going to cover that in detail, talk about where the hot markets are and where the next hot markets are likely to be coming from. Number two is I'm going to talk a little bit about Zillow's Premier Agent and Zillow's business as a whole. It is absolutely booming, much to the chagrin of many agents, but it is what it is, and we need to understand what's happening there. And number three is that a federal judge has overturned some eviction bans, and so there's a lot happening there, which I think is really important, and Scott is going to talk about that as well. So without further ado, Scott, why don't you take it away on story number one?
Thanks, Randy. So the city behind me is lovely Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, which was ranked number one on the new Wall Street Journal / Realtor.com's hottest emerging housing markets. Now, if this sounds familiar to you, Realtor.com puts out a hottest markets every month. This is a little bit different. So that one that we talked about the previous week was measuring how many people were visiting property search sites for that town and how quickly days on markets were declining. This is different. This is more like trying to treat all the cities in America as if they're separate stocks, and trying to make a forward-looking estimate about which stocks are going to be the high-growth hot ones over the next 12 months. And so what they did was they combined some basic housing price statistics like home prices and home price movements, days on market, et cetera, with kind of livability statistics and local economic strength statistics, how many jobs there are, et cetera. And so when they combined all these things together in their proprietary way, they ended up with the top 10 markets that they think will perform really well. In other words, that you as an investor should be investing in were Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, Austin, the Round Rock area, Springfield, Ohio, Billings, Montana, Spokane, Washington, Lafayette, Indiana, Reno, Nevada, Concord, New Hampshire, Manchester, Nashua, and Santa Cruz. So they're going to be putting this out every month. As kind of an idea for where you might want to put your...
I've made my bet, Scott, if you could see my background. That's what it's all about, isn't it? I guess there's more to Idaho than that based on your wallpaper right there. For those of you who may have missed Wednesday's episode of the Daily List Report, we had George Ratiu from Realtor.com on, and we went in depth on this topic exactly. And so you can get a lot more detail if you go ahead and you check out that episode right there. Okay, awesome. All right. Number two story is talking about Zillow. Now, Zillow is sort of the third rail, Scott, isn't it? When we talk to real estate agents, you talk to Zillow, and you've got some who are like, look, I make a lot of money off of Zillow. And you've got many others who just have an absolute deep hatred of Zillow. So wherever you fall on that spectrum, I think what's important to understand is what they are up to. You need to understand that, because the honest truth, Scott, is they're killing it right now. This is a company that for many years had a market capitalization of between $7 and $8 billion. For years, they hovered there. And over the last, 18 months now, they're a $28 billion company, at least in terms of how they're valued by the market. They are absolutely crushing it. And there's a few things that we want to point out today. So let me pull up something on the screen real quick, and let's share this. This is from Mike Del Prete, and we're going to share this link below. If you haven't followed him and you want to stay up on what's happening with iBuyers or Zillow or whatever, there probably isn't a better source than this. And so there's a few things that I want to cover in today with respect to Zillow. Number one is that they've now turned 3 consecutive quarters, Scott, of profitability. And this is a company that historically has made very little money, had very, very sort of little quarterly profits from time to time, 3 quarters in a row. Number two, though, is their Premier Agent program, right? The one that a lot of agents that listen to this show, frankly, participate in, where you're paying good money, you're getting good leads. This has grown tremendously. So if you look at their quarter over quarter growth on their Premier Agent program, and then year over year, it's a massive, massive increase in revenue there. And that actually is contributing a tremendous amount to their profitability and to their overall revenue growth. So if you look at their Premier Agent revenue, you look at last quarter, Scott, we're looking at basically almost $350 million, $340 million just from the Premier Agent program. Now, we all know that they are also in the iBuyer business. And this is something that was put on hold for about a year, maybe a little less than a year, but this is back in force. And what's important to point out, if you look at the chart on the screen right now, is that they're losing less money than they ever have before on this. Now, sure, part of that is a function of the fact that home prices are crazy, crazy high, but they are also getting more efficient about this. And there's a lot of detail that Mike puts out there on iBuyers specifically and what's happening there. The last thing to point out, and this really speaks to what a lot of people are calling, Scott, Zillow 2.0, is a massive increase in their mortgage revenue, right? So they have made a big effort to get into the mortgage business and the iBuyer business, and obviously their core advertising platform. They are sort of everywhere in this transaction, and we will expect them to do more. And frankly, Scott, with a market cap of now pushing $30 billion, they have access to a lot of capital. They can basically spend money on whatever they want to at this point. So again, wherever you fall on this, it's important to understand that you need to understand what's happening here. Scott, thanks for the awkward transition there. I love it. You can take it away on story number 3.
Hey, I'm in a courtroom.
That's perfect.
Didn't gather. So one of our most popular stories was about a U.S. federal judge overturning the CDC's eviction moratorium. Now, there's a lot of legalese that even I can't claim to understand completely, but I would just summarize it as this. More and more judges are saying that the CDC never had the legal authority to impose a national eviction ban. The CDC's authority to do that rests on one key thing, which is that the CDC is supposed to make sure that they are protecting the country from the spread of diseases, among other things. And so when this ban was put in place, it was always put forward as a way to keep people in their houses and not out in the streets where they would be spreading the virus. Now, that's pretty tenuous, let's be honest. The real reason you don't want to evict people is because it's nasty. And because during the housing crisis, people had nowhere, or during the teeth of the pandemic, people had nowhere to go. So I think, what we can say here is that the eviction ban it's not dead, but it's dying. And in any case, as vaccination rates rise, that argument that they're protecting the public good by, not allowing evictions and therefore people aren't out there spreading the virus just gets, shakier and shakier. So it will depend now what the appeals court does, because it was immediately appealed by the Department of Justice, or potentially what the Supreme Court does or doesn't do, whether this will last. But I think in any case, in the next month or two, this is almost certainly going to be dismantled one way or the other. And then you will just fall back on a hodgepodge of state and local, eviction bans or not. So, this one doesn't have much life left in it.
Thanks, Scott, for that. I mean, this has been something it's been interesting. It was certainly helpful at the beginning. I think it's maybe run its course to some degree. And so we'll keep an eye on this and we'll definitely report back. Scott, thanks for covering those.
Randy, next time it's your honor, Scott, please.
Oh, yes, that's right. Please. Nice. I forgot the formalities here. Thank you for that, Your Honor. I appreciate that. All right. As we did last week, a couple of things before we leave here today. One is please give us feedback. This is a new format for the show. We want to make sure that we're covering stuff that's important to you, interesting to you. We're delivering it in a format that is compelling, that keeps you interested and keeps you watching. That's number one. So please tell us that below. Number two is, again, please make sure you subscribe to this channel. Click that little bell so you're notified of all future episodes. And Scott, I think what we're going to do today, as we did last week, is we're going to take it away with a joke-telling spud. Is that how we say it? What would you call him?
Yeah, joke-telling spud, a talking tuber.
Talking tuber. All right, Scott, until next week, we'll see you soon.
Thanks, man. Hello, it's the Idaho Spud with some real estate jokes. Hey, do you know how the Homeowners Association tells time? It just looks at its neighborhood watch. I was really, really excited to be offered some cheap homes in Egypt. But it turned out it was a pyramid selling scheme. Hey, did you hear about Robin Hood's house? He Yeah, it's really difficult to sell because it has such a little John. Thanks. I'm out of here.